We've all been there. You trust someone, you open up to them, and then out of nowhere, they hurt you. It could be a friend, a family member, a colleague, or even a stranger. It's painful, it stings, and it can leave us questioning how we should respond. Do we retaliate? Do we keep silent? Or do we simply walk away? Today, I want to talk about a topic that affects all of us at one point or another: how to handle people who hurt you. The truth is, we can't always control others' actions, but we can control how we react to them. So, how do we navigate through this? How do we protect our peace, heal from the hurt, and still grow stronger in the process? In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 5 powerful ways to handle people who hurt you. Ways that can turn your pain into growth, your anger into wisdom, and your wounds into sources of strength. Let's dive in and take control of our emotional well-being no matter what life throws at us. Protecting your emotional space is one of the most essential practices for maintaining mental well-being and overall happiness. It is easy to feel overwhelmed or drained when we allow others to take advantage of our kindness, manipulate our emotions, or cross boundaries that we haven't even set for ourselves. The concept of emotional space is about understanding that your feelings, thoughts, and energy are your own, and they deserve to be respected and nurtured. To achieve this, it is crucial to clearly define what is and isn't acceptable behavior in your life, not only to protect your peace, but also to foster healthier, more meaningful relationships. One of the first steps in protecting your emotional space is becoming aware of your emotional triggers. These are situations, words, or actions that cause you to feel hurt, angry, or upset. They often stem from past experiences, personal insecurities, or unmet needs. Once you are aware of these triggers, you can better identify when they are being crossed by someone else's behavior. For example, if someone consistently interrupts you while you're speaking, this could be a trigger for you, making you feel disrespected. Similarly, if someone consistently makes hurtful jokes at your expense, this might cause you emotional pain. Recognizing these moments is the first step in protecting your emotional space. Once you've identified these triggers, it's important to start setting clear and firm boundaries. A boundary is not a wall to isolate yourself from others. Instead, it's a protective measure to ensure your emotional well-being. Setting a boundary means expressing to others what behavior is not acceptable and taking action when those boundaries are crossed. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, or verbal, and they vary from person to person. For example, you might have a boundary against people raising their voices at you, or you might refuse to tolerate passive-aggressive comments. Defining these limits will allow you to know what behavior to expect from others, and more importantly, what you will and will not tolerate. Establishing clear boundaries also involves being assertive. It's important to communicate your boundaries with confidence and clarity. If someone behaves in a way that crosses your emotional boundaries, you must let them know in a respectful but firm manner. This could involve saying something like, "I don't appreciate being spoken to in that tone," or "That comment really hurt my feelings, and I'd prefer not to discuss that topic with you." Often, people are unaware of the impact their actions have on others. In these cases, setting clear boundaries offers them the opportunity to change their behavior. However, it's also important to understand that not everyone will respect your boundaries, and this can be one of the most challenging aspects of emotional protection. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries, despite your attempts to communicate them, it's necessary to take more decisive action. This could mean limiting your interaction with that person, distancing yourself emotionally, or, in more extreme cases, cutting ties altogether. While this can be difficult, especially if the person is someone you care about, protecting your emotional space is crucial for maintaining your mental health. You can't pour from an empty cup, and if you're constantly allowing others to drain you emotionally, you're not doing yourself any favors. Emotional space requires being unapologetic about your needs and valuing your well-being over the comfort of others. Another key element of protecting your emotional space is learning to say no without guilt. Many people struggle with the idea of saying no because they fear rejection or disappointment from others. However, saying no is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining control over your emotional energy. When you say yes to something that doesn't serve you or compromises your emotional space, you're sacrificing your well-being for the sake of others' expectation. Learning to say no to requests, commitments, or behaviors that don't align with your values or needs is an essential act of self-respect. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to putting others first, but over time it becomes easier and more natural. Protecting your emotional space also means being mindful of the people you allow into your life. Not everyone deserves access to your energy, and not every relationship is healthy for you. While it's important to show compassion and empathy, you must also be discerning about who you invest your time and energy in. Some people may bring negativity, drama, or toxicity into your life, and continuously engaging with them can be emotionally draining. It's essential to surround yourself with individuals who uplift you, support your goals, and respect your emotional boundaries. This doesn't mean cutting people off at the slightest sign of conflict, but rather evaluating whether a relationship is mutually beneficial or if it consistently leaves you feeling emotionally depleted. When you protect your emotional space, you also create room for personal growth and healing. Emotional space is not just about blocking out negative energy. It's about giving yourself the freedom to thrive. When you set boundaries and protect yourself from harmful behavior, you create a safe and nurturing environment where you can focus on your goals, aspirations, and self-care. This emotional clarity allows you to engage with the world more authentically, without the weight of unresolved pain or constant emotional turbulence. It also helps you build resilience as you learn to navigate difficult situations with grace and confidence. Furthermore, protecting your emotional space encourages healthier communication in relationships. When you define what is acceptable and unacceptable, you create a clear understanding with others about how to treat you. This transparency can strengthen your relationships as both parties are aware of each other's needs and expectations. When both people respect each other's emotional space, there's a deeper sense of trust and mutual respect, which fosters a healthier dynamic overall. On the other hand, if someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, this can serve as a red flag that the relationship may need to be reevaluated or adjusted. It's also important to recognize that protecting your emotional space doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world or becoming overly guarded. Emotional boundaries are not about creating barriers that isolate you from others. They're about finding a balance between openness and self-preservation. By being clear about what is acceptable behavior, you allow yourself to be vulnerable in a way that feels safe and empowering. Vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness, but it requires you to feel secure in your emotional space before you open up to others. One aspect of protecting your emotional space that is often overlooked is self-compassion. When you are faced with hurt or betrayal, it's easy to blame yourself or internalize the negativity. However, practicing self-compassion allows you to recognize that you deserve respect, kindness, and understanding, just like anyone else. If someone hurts you, it's not a reflection of your worth, but rather a reflection of their behavior. By practicing self-compassion, you can acknowledge the pain, forgive yourself for any perceived shortcomings, and move forward with a sense of peace. This self-love is the foundation upon which your emotional boundaries are built. There may also be situations where you need to revisit and redefine your boundaries as you grow. As you evolve and change, your needs and emotional responses may shift. What once worked as a boundary may no longer feel appropriate or effective. Being adaptable and willing to reassess your boundaries ensures that your emotional space remains protected in a way that aligns with who you are at any given moment. It's important to remain flexible while also staying true to your core values and beliefs. This ongoing process of self-awareness and self-care helps you continue to grow in healthy, positive directions. In conclusion, protecting your emotional space is a vital practice for maintaining your mental and emotional health. By identifying your emotional triggers, setting clear boundaries, learning to say no, and being discerning about the people you allow into your life, you create a safe and nurturing environment for yourself. This practice is not about isolating yourself or rejecting others. It's about taking ownership of your emotional well-being and ensuring that your energy is respected and valued. Protecting your emotional space allows you to grow stronger, heal from past hurts, and build more authentic, meaningful relationships. Letting go of grudges is one of the most profound steps you can take for your emotional health and peace of mind. Holding on to anger, resentment, or hurt caused by others can weigh you down, cloud your judgment, and block your ability to move forward in life. It can create a cycle of negative emotions, continually affecting your mental well-being and even your physical health. In many cases, we hold on to grudges because we feel justified in our anger or because we want to hold someone accountable for their actions. However, holding on to that grudge isn't serving you. It's serving your pain and hurt, which only keeps you anchored to the past and prevents you from experiencing the full potential of peace and freedom in your life. The first thing to understand about grudges is that they often stem from a deep emotional wound. When someone betrays you, hurts you, or fails you in some way, the natural response is to feel pain, disappointment, and anger. These feelings are a part of being human and are important because they signal that something isn't right. However, when we hold on to those feelings long after the incident, they begin to turn into a grudge. A grudge is like a weight that you carry around, and with time, it can grow heavier, seeping into every aspect of your life. It clouds your judgment, distorts your interactions with others, and keeps you fixated on past events that you can't change. Letting go of a grudge doesn't mean that you are excusing the behavior of the person who hurt you. It doesn't mean you are condoning or accepting their actions as right. Instead, it means that you are choosing to release the emotional hold that event or person has over your life. By doing this, you free yourself from the burden of carrying around unresolved negative emotions. This process is about reclaiming your inner peace, about making a conscious decision to prioritize your own well-being over the lingering hurt that may be tied to someone else's actions. One of the most significant challenges in letting go of a grudge is recognizing that it's not about the other person, it's about you. The person who hurt you may never apologize, may never acknowledge the harm they caused, or may even continue to behave in ways that you find upsetting. When we hold on to grudges, we often allow that person to have power over us because they still occupy our thoughts and emotions. We might replay the hurtful words or actions in our minds, reliving the pain over and over again, but by holding on to that resentment, we are allowing them to continue affecting our lives long after the incident has occurred. The only person suffering from this ongoing resentment is you. The process of letting go of a grudge begins with understanding the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you. It is a gift you give to yourself. It is a decision to free yourself from the emotional chains that bind you to the past. Forgiveness is a conscious choice that doesn't require you to forget what happened or to pretend that it didn't hurt. It simply means choosing not to allow the past to define your present or future. When you forgive, you choose to move forward rather than stay stuck in the past. Forgiving doesn't always happen instantly. It can be a gradual process that requires time and self-reflection. Sometimes the hurt is so deep that letting go of a grudge feels nearly impossible. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. The process of forgiveness requires you to confront your pain and acknowledge the impact it has had on your life. It's important to sit with your emotions, feel the anger, sadness, or disappointment, and allow yourself to process those feelings. Suppressing or ignoring them will only prolong the pain and make it harder to let go of the grudge. A key part of forgiveness is realizing that your emotional health should take precedence over your desire for retribution or justice. It's natural to want the person who hurt you to feel the consequences of their actions. You may want them to apologize, to recognize the pain they caused, or to change their behavior. However, expecting these things can keep you trapped in a cycle of longing for something that may never come. The truth is, you can't control the actions of others, The only thing you can control is your response. By letting go of the grudge, you are not relinquishing your right to feel hurt, but you are choosing to stop allowing their behavior to control your emotions. One of the most powerful reasons to let go of a grudge is the impact it has on your overall well-being. Holding on to negative emotions like resentment can affect your mental and physical health. Chronic anger and bitterness have been linked to increased stress, high blood pressure, and a weakened immune system. When you allow yourself to dwell on negative thoughts, your body and mind are in a constant state of tension, which can lead to anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. By releasing a grudge, you give yourself permission to heal, not just emotionally, but physically as well. Letting go of a grudge also opens up space for healthier, more positive relationships. When you're holding on to unresolved anger or bitterness, it can affect your interactions with others. You may become defensive, closed off, or distant, not just from the person who hurt you, but from others who may not have done anything wrong. Holding a grudge creates an emotional wall between you and others, making it difficult to experience genuine connection and intimacy. By letting go of your grudges, you begin to heal and open yourself up to love, trust, and the possibility of deeper, more meaningful relationships. Furthermore, letting go of a grudge is an act of self-empowerment. It's about reclaiming your emotional sovereignty. You are not at the mercy of the actions of others. You have the ability to choose how you respond. When you choose to forgive, you take back the power that the grudge has been holding over you. You take back the power to heal and to find peace within yourself, regardless of how others behave. This is a liberating choice that puts you in control of your own emotional life. It's an opportunity to rise above the hurt and be the person you want to be, not someone defined by past injuries. In addition to personal empowerment, letting go of grudges allows you to cultivate a sense of inner peace. Peace is not something that comes from external circumstances, but from within. When you release the weight of resentment, you create space for calmness and tranquility. You stop being consumed by the past and start living more fully in the present. The act of forgiving releases you from the constant need to dwell on what went wrong and gives you the freedom to focus on what is right in your life. Peace becomes your state of mind, and with it comes the ability to navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and clarity. Letting go of a grudge also contributes to your personal growth and emotional maturity. It takes a level of emotional intelligence to recognize when a grudge is no longer serving you. It requires the humility to acknowledge that while you may have been wronged, holding on to bitterness or anger will only keep you stuck. Emotional maturity is the ability to accept the complexities of human relationships, to recognize that people make mistakes, and to decide not to let those mistakes dictate your future. By letting go of grudges, you demonstrate that you are evolving into someone who values peace, forgiveness, and emotional freedom more than holding on to past hurts. Letting go of a grudge is not always easy, and it's not always a linear process. There may be moments when you feel that the wound has been reopened or when you're reminded of the pain. However, with time, patience, and effort, you can slowly release the grip that the grudge has on you. It's important to remember that letting go is a choice that you make for your own well-being, not for anyone else. It's a decision to free yourself from the weight of past pain so that you can live a life of greater peace, joy, and emotional freedom. Prioritizing your emotional well-being and growth over seeking revenge or validation is one of the most powerful decisions you can make in your life. The journey of personal development and emotional health requires a deep understanding of the importance of inner peace and self-respect, and it demands the courage to move away from the temptation of seeking validation or revenge when others wrong you. It's all too easy to fall into the trap of wanting to get back at someone or seeking acknowledgement and praise from others, but these pursuits often lead to deeper dissatisfaction, internal conflict, and emotional turmoil. Instead, by choosing to prioritize your emotional well-being and growth, you embrace a path that leads to true peace, personal empowerment, and long-lasting happiness. At the core of prioritizing your emotional well-being is the understanding that your your happiness and peace are your responsibility. In a world where it's common to place expectations on others for our emotional fulfillment, this can be a challenging concept to grasp. When people hurt us, betray our trust, or fail to meet our emotional needs, it's natural to feel angry, hurt, and frustrated. We may even feel the urge to get revenge, to make the person who wronged us feel the pain we've experienced. Alternatively, we may seek validation from others, hoping for acknowledgement of our worth and the injustice we've suffered. However, chasing these things, whether through revenge or external validation, only drains our energy, perpetuates negativity, and keeps us stuck in a cycle of emotional turmoil. When we focus on seeking revenge, we're giving power to the person who has wronged us. Revenge is an external reaction driven by the desire for retaliation or justice. It often involves projecting our pain onto others in an attempt to balance the scales. However, revenge rarely leads to the satisfaction we expect. Instead of providing closure or relief, it often perpetuates a cycle of conflict and bitterness. When we seek revenge, we stay emotionally attached to the person who hurt us and the incident itself. This attachment prevents us from moving forward. It ties us to the past, feeding anger and resentment that hinder our ability to grow and heal. The desire for validation similarly can be equally damaging. Validation is the act of seeking acknowledgement or approval from others to feel good about ourselves. It's tempting to look for external sources of validation when we feel rejected or overlooked. But the problem with seeking validation from others is that it puts our worth in their hands. When we place our self-esteem on the opinions of others, we become vulnerable to external judgment, which can change from day to day or person to person. This external validation doesn't provide lasting emotional satisfaction because it relies on factors that are beyond our control. And more importantly, the more we seek validation, the more we distance ourselves from understanding and appreciating our intrinsic worth. Our happiness becomes tied to how others see us, which is an unstable foundation for emotional well-being. True emotional well-being comes from within. It's about accepting yourself, understanding your value, and learning to be at peace with your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. When you prioritize your emotional health, you're making the conscious decision to stop giving away your power to the opinions of others or to the actions of those who hurt you. You're choosing to invest in your growth and healing, focusing on how you respond to challenges instead of letting those challenges define you. This inner peace allows you to move through life with a sense of calm and resilience, unaffected by external circumstances or the actions of others. One of the key components of prioritizing emotional well-being is developing a sense of self-worth that is independent of others. Self-worth is not something that can be earned, validated, or taken away by others. It's an inherent part of who you are. When you understand that your worth is not contingent on the approval of others, you start to let go of the need for external validation. You begin to value yourself for who you are rather than what others think of you. This shift in perspective creates a sense of emotional freedom, allowing you to navigate the world with confidence and authenticity without being overly concerned with how others perceive you. Emotional growth is also a crucial element of prioritizing your well-being. Emotional growth involves developing the ability to manage your emotions in healthy and constructive ways. It requires self-awareness, the ability to process and understand your emotions, and the wisdom to make choices that align with your long-term peace and happiness. Emotional growth means not reacting impulsively or out of anger, but choosing a response that is rooted in understanding and maturity. It means learning from your experiences, including the painful ones, and using them to become a better, more resilient person. When you prioritize growth over seeking revenge, you take control of your emotional narrative. Instead of being a passive recipient of the pain others cause you, you actively choose how you respond. Rather than letting someone else's actions dictate your emotions, you choose to rise above the situation, to look for the lesson in the hardship, and to grow from the experience. This process requires emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize when your emotions are being triggered and to make intentional choices about how you want to respond. Choosing growth also means taking responsibility for your own healing. It's easy to blame others for our pain and to wait for them to apologize or make things right, but healing cannot be dependent on someone else's actions. It is something we must actively work on for ourselves. When we prioritize growth, we recognize that we are the ones who hold the key to our emotional healing. We can choose to let go of past hurts, forgive, and move forward regardless of whether or not the other person acknowledges or apologizes for their wrongs. By choosing to focus on our own growth, we stop giving power to the actions of others and start taking control of our emotional journey. Another important aspect of prioritizing emotional well-being is learning to forgive. Forgiveness is not about letting someone off the hook for their actions. It's about releasing the hold that anger and resentment have on you. When you forgive, you let go of the negative emotions that keep you bound to the person or situation that hurt you. This act of releasing is an essential part of emotional growth because it frees up space for more positive emotions, such as peace, compassion, and gratitude. Forgiveness allows you to reclaim your power, to move on from the past, and to focus on what you can control, your own peace and happiness. When you choose growth over revenge or validation, you also learn the value of self-care. Emotional well-being requires regular attention and nurturing. Just as we care for our bodies through exercise and nutrition, we must also care for our emotional health through practices that promote mental clarity, relaxation, and self-love. This can include activities such as mindfulness, meditation, journaling, and spending time with supportive people. Self-care also means setting boundaries and protecting your emotional space from people or situations that drain your energy. When you prioritize self-care, you're making sure that your emotional needs are being met and that you're not sacrificing your well-being for the sake of others or for fleeting validation. Ultimately, choosing emotional well-being and growth over seeking revenge or validation is a decision to live authentically and peacefully. It's about understanding that true happiness doesn't come from the approval of others or from retaliating against those who hurt you. It comes from within. By letting go of the need for revenge or validation, you free yourself from the cycle of negativity and emotional turmoil, and instead you make room for the growth and peace that will truly fulfill you. As you grow emotionally, you become more resilient, more self-aware, and more capable of handling life's challenges with grace and confidence. You no longer need external validation because you know your worth, and you no longer need revenge because your peace is no longer dependent on the actions of others. Prioritizing emotional well-being and growth is the key to living a life of lasting peace, happiness, and fulfillment.